Hi, everybody that's joining us. I'm going to have to jump right back on. Unfortunately, this link is keeps on playing some music in my ears. Oh, there it goes. How's everyone doing? Let me see. I have a I have a thought about why this is happening. How are you guys all doing now? I'm glad to see you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Scoop, where you get the scoop on this week's news. My name is Jenna, and this is SmartHER News. And we have a very special event today that I'm excited that you're a part of, which is a live Christmas broadcast. So we have some questions that were submitted from our Scoop audience. We also have those of you who are able to join us live that can interact as well. We are broadcasting live through smarternews.com, which is why I was getting that feedback in my ear. Some of you would likely not be able to hear that, but I was hearing some feedback in my ear. So I had to take a little second and pause and shut down some windows. I don't know if you guys are like this, but this is my worst habit. I have about 25,000 tabs open on my computer on a regular basis. I think that reflects my brain, which is showing that there's a lot of different variety, but very low efficiency. And that's how I research that. I want a little bit of everything. I like a collage of information because it's really about pulling from different sources. It is how you are able to pull together your reporting. That's how I feel I'm able to report the best. You pull a little bit from here, you put a little bit from there, you notice connections that you didn't notice before. And so it creates a very challenging workflow sometimes. So thank you for your patience. I'm really grateful to see all of you, Jenna, Megan, Stephanie, Jim. Thank you again for joining us live. Before we get started in some of the news, so here's how we're going to go through today. I have a quick news article I want to share with you that really stopped me in my tracks, that emphasizes why what we're doing on Smarter News is so important and why your contribution to Smarter News is so important and why you matter. I want to talk to you about two quick news stories that I think are really important to have here on your radar. And then we're going to get straight to the questions and we're just going to have some fun. We also have some Christmas prizes. I know maybe some of us are a little bit tired of doing Zoom meetings and calls. We're not using Zoom. We're using a program, by the way, called StreamYard, which I love using. Highly recommend for your business in any capacity. It's great for broadcasting live as we're doing here now. But I'm hopeful that we have a little grace for each other during this time period. That this is a great way for us still to connect, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. We're going to end with a very heartening story. One of the most important stories that came across my desk this year, a news story and a personal story. And I've been waiting for the right moment to share it with you. And so we're going to end there today. So that's how I'm going to map out the show today. Let me go ahead and show you this article. So last week, one of our colleagues sent me an article, the Wall Street Journal. And listen, I get sent a lot of articles. I'm probably good. My husband would tell you my percentage of reading these articles sent to me is very low, but I would like to think it's, around 75%, give or take, depending on what I'm getting that text or email. I'm so glad I didn't miss this. So let me show you this. This is from the Wall Street Journal. And this is why Smarter News matters and why you matter to Smarter News and why what we're doing it on Scoop matters. All of this is really important. So here's what the Wall Street Journal's report on what's being done on Google. There's a test being done on Google using AI. So right now, if you want to jump in to your Google and you want to check out, let's say you want to do the latest news on Israel and you type in something like that, you may get several news articles recommended to you. And you could pick one of them, you can read a few of them, you see a bunch of different headlines, you may see different sources, and you decide where you want to go from there. Well, what Google is experimenting with is using artificial intelligence in that search. So instead of you being recommended news articles, you would actually just receive an answer to your query. And that answer could be a quick summary of what AI generated based on your search. So, what's the latest on the war between Israel and Hamas? You may just get a quick blurb. And according to those that have seen this testing, which is being done for about 10 million users, you don't see the source for that. It's just generated by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence that they've created is grabbing from different news articles without even sourcing those news articles. And in order for the user to go further and get a news article that would enable them to do a little bit more research, they have to click through several places Now, I haven't seen this myself, so I'm basing this on the Wall Street Journal piece. But let me read to you a quote because it just explains how this is going to affect traffic to different news sites, which nearly 50% of traffic to news sites will come from Google searches. This is a this just gives you an idea of what's being said here, that basically this could be a death knell to a lot of news publishers. I'm going to read you one paragraph. Google's embrace of AI in search threatens to throw off that delicate equilibrium, publishing executives say, by dramatically increasing the risk that users' searches won't result in them clicking on links that take them to publishers' sites. Most gallingly for publishers, Google's AI search was trained in part on their content and other material from across the web without payment. So that's what's happening. So not only are the sources not provided, but there's no payment. Let's say the Wall Street Journal has a really rich subscription base. There's no payment to the Wall Street Journal for using some of their reporting. Here's a quote from Matthias Dofner. He's the chairman and CEO of Axel Springer. He's referring to this technology. He says, AI and large language models have the potential to destroy journalism and media brands as we know it. I mean, this really caught my attention. It's very difficult to be an independent news source. It's very difficult to figure out a business model that works where you don't want to gate all your content so no one can see anything on your website. I don't want to do pop-up ads from Toyota. No offense to Toyota, it's just the first thing that popped into my mind because those are the ads coming up when I'm trying to read an article. I don't want to do that to you. I want to create a solution in news where we're not seeing all of these advertisements that very seldom do people buy from that make it difficult for you to consume news. I don't want to put out clickbait. I don't want to put out just a subscription based model. But look at what's happening to the media landscape. Think about how this can be used, especially in 2024, going into an election cycle when people are concerned and have questions, rightfully so, about different candidates. Where Google's AI is your editorial judgment, not an actual person. And sure, there's a lot of difficulties and challenges with the media landscape editorially. That's why we developed a nonpartisan news site. And you may see it, but that's your agency as a consumer is that you could read something from Fox News, then you read something from MSNBC, and maybe you take a little bit of both, and then you listen to Smarter News. You have an idea where this information is coming from. But think about our kids, think about teenagers, think about those that are experiencing their first real news cycle as an adult where they're really tapping into what's going on in the world and this becomes their habit where they feel like they're getting news from Google and they don't need news from an actual journalist. It's scary. So thank you for contributing to Smarter News, signing up for Scoop, which is our insider newsletter that we deliver on Monday. That has a special cheat sheet and a special report. We're going to be expanding Scoop in the new year. We're going to have both a way for you to contribute and also a lot that we're going to give you for free. This is the early plan just based on this article that came out 4 days ago. And here's the other catch, and then we'll actually get to more of the news. The other catch is that Meta and YouTube, all of these social media giants have been very, very clear that they will not promote news sources. That's not their business. They don't want to get into the business of news. They much prefer that you look at a travel blogger. I love those travel bloggers, by the way, or the person making a cocktail. I love those cocktail bartenders that are making the holiday cocktails. Those are great. I love that content too. But they've been very clear that they're not going to support or promote news products because that's not what they want to be in the business of. And also, as we've seen over the last several years, whether it was Twitter, the previous iteration of X, or any of these other social media platforms, where different editorial judgments were made about what content you were going to see and when and how. And that also not being done by journalists. So I believe in journalism and I believe in a free press. And I think a free press is really important to America. These sort of headlines really scare me. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you and I'm very grateful for you. So thank you for that. Let me just quickly turn to some of the news that I think is important today. Two quick things, drastically different from each other. But there is a major recall by Quaker Oats, and it's in a lot of different products. I just want to show this. This will be in the show notes. So in case you have a Quaker Oats products at home, If it's a snack pack, this is all related to salmonella. We've seen some salmonella and illness related food illness related recalls in recent weeks. Cantaloupes come to mind, and especially in the holidays, we're all grabbing things, different things are in our pantry. Take a look at this list. I mean, it is multiple pages long of different Quaker oat products that are being recalled, and these are products with an expiration date that go deep into next year. So if you shop any of these items, these are Quaker Oats granola bars, granola products, something just to be aware of that this recall is happening. I put all the information on our website too, so you could check it out. I think that's really important. Something else that's important is that the Senate remains in session this week. I told you last week that Congress had on their calendar that they're going to be going home and that they were going to go back to their districts to work for the holidays, get a couple weeks off. There was a question about funding, whether or not we would see new funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for the US southern border. The House of Representatives is gone. The Senate has stayed because there's a question about whether or not there could be some sort of deal still worked out. Although right now, it doesn't seem like any deal in particular is catching fire. Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, a Republican from South Carolina, said really he doesn't see anything being done until next year. We don't have the same sort of pressure that we have on other funding bills in the past, where I could say to you, well, listen, these funding bills are super important because if they don't come together, then the government could shut down. There's no consequence like that, except that there would be no new money going to Ukraine or to Israel or any changes regarding the US southern border and funding. And there's quite a bit of debate in different reports about what Republicans really want, if they want more funding for the border, more security, and the border is becoming such a big issue because of the sheer numbers at the border, that Democrats are also growing concerned going into an election year about what this issue may mean for voters. You have a lot of different dynamics at play, but the big headline is right now, there's no new funding bill at this moment. Could we see one before Christmas? Maybe. What would it take to actually get signed and get into law by the White House? Um, it's a long path. So just want you to be aware of that as well. If you have any questions on that funding bill, happy to answer them. All right. So let's get into some of our questions. What we asked you last week is to submit a question. If you had a way to do so over voice memo, we love hearing your voices. And so we have some of those. And we also have some gifts for those that were able to submit their questions. I hope to do this more often. Hey, and if gifts have to be a thing, I'm ready to hand out gifts. I love this. We should have Christmas all year long. So we're going to start off. There's a variety of different questions. And we're going to start off with one from Alex. I really appreciate Alex's question. It's quite involved. And I also want to give a big thank you to Alex's wife, and you'll hear why in just a second. Here's Alex.
Hey Jenna, this is Alex. My wife Mary introduced me to SmartHER News a few years ago, and we love supporting you guys with Scoop. One of the questions I had as a husband and just thinking about, what's best for my family in this country is how do we know which presidential candidates are doing well heading into 2024? And, coming up with the Iowa elections, all these other things, how do these different campaign leaders and presidential candidates get their funding for each campaign? Like, is it the people? Is it large corporations? Is it a mix of people? Who is providing all this funding for each candidate and why? And then, how are the candidates doing? How do we know how they're going to be doing? Who's kind of the few front runners we're starting to see? Those are my questions for 2024 and into the new year. Thanks, Jenna, for what you do and providing honest and authentic news for us.
Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate that question very much. I love how Alex was just getting to the issue. Who are these people? Where is this money coming from? And this is the fundamental question that so many of us have. Don't you have that question yourself when people are talking about billions of dollars flowing to certain campaigns and certain issues? You're like, what's going on? Where is this all coming from? So this is actually quite complicated. And let me see. I wanted to pull up a chart for you. I'll tell you this, these are not the easiest things to look at. Let me see if I can pull it up for you because I wanted to just show you where the different money is coming from. And quite frankly, it's probably not even worth it because it's so complicated. Here's the bottom line. There's a couple different ways that different campaigns and candidates and causes get money. And I really want to stay there for Alex's questions because Stephanie also asked a question about polling, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later. So here's what you need to know. There are ways that individuals can contribute to candidates contribute to parties, and there's limits. There's limits of what an individual can actually do. Those limits are set in a way that if we can do a deeper dive and have a little bit more time to research this question, I'd love to know. For example, there was a limit. Y- th- how did they come up with these different limits? How did they say that you can contribute $43,000? I'm coming up with the top of my head to a commit to the Republican National Committee. How did the Federal Elections Commission come up with these standards? We don't really have a precise answer on that, but there's different ways that you as an individual with limits can donate to different parts of the political process, directly to a candidate, directly to a committee, directly to a party. There's ways that you can do it, but it has to be limited to a certain amount of money. And if you go over that, you could be breaking the law. You could get into trouble for illegal campaign contributions. Periodically we hear that in the news. There's also ways that the party committees, and those can be on the national and on a local level, they can accept money subject to some limits from individuals and from other sources as well. So there's all these limits, whether it's the party or as an individual, there's limits for donations. And then you're likely to hear something about PACs. There's a political action committees, and PACs can be started or related to different groups. For example, a union could have a PAC or a trade group could have a PAC. They can only accept money subject to limits too from members, and they can donate directly to candidates and to parties. So you have these sort of three major highways: individuals, party committees themselves, and these political action committees. But all of them have limits, and all of them can directly donate to a specific candidate or a specific party. Here's the difference though. This is super PACs. Super PACs are something completely different. And this is where this can get controversial. And there's been a lot of debates about the role of super PACs and, quite frankly, PACs over the years. But super PACs can accept unlimited sums of money from corporations, from unions, from individuals. However, they cannot donate directly to a candidate or directly to a party. They have to use their money how they see fit. And this can get very confusing as a consumer or a voter, because you may see a commercial for a certain candidate or against a certain candidate. And those super PACs have complete and total creative license to do whatever they think will be helpful to their particular choice on an issue or a person. So, for example, if you see an advertisement for President Biden, you may see that from the Democrats themselves, the Democrat National Committee, and you'll see that, or it could be from a super PAC. You may see a Democrat super PAC put out an ad that is particularly critical of a Republican candidate. And the only difference here is that it's unlimited amount of money, and there can't be any coordination with the candidate or with the party. The super PACs are supposed to operate completely independent. However, they can get as much money as possible from all sorts of different sources. So it is a very, there's a kind of reference to this being a dark area, campaign financing, who's doing what, where, how is their money being used. As an individual, this can be highly regulated. Your limits are out there. You can check your bank account. We know how much you're giving. We know that you can give to a certain amount, and it can be a little confusing. What election cycle are you giving in? How is it a total amount for the year? There can be all sorts of different restrictions. The super PACs have more creative license, and because of that unlimited amount of money, and because they can go a lot of different directions, and the tone can look different, the style can look different, but they can be very influential, as we kind of come back to the beginning of our broadcast, in how they're reaching voters, whether it's a commercial on television, whether it's online, whether it's through email. So you're seeing a lot of different flows of money in a lot of different direction. And it can be, in certain cases, very difficult to track. So, Alex, I'm not sure that we totally answered your question there, but I'm hopeful that I gave you a little bit of perspective to say, hey, this is actually very difficult. The money is diverse and from a lot of different sources, and the sources and the money really matter. So, for Alex today, Alex, I hope you don't mind. I was hoping my husband was able to join us. I think he's caught in a meeting, but if he jumps on later, I'm going to include him. My husband wrote 2 different books. This is Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win, and The Dichotomy of Leadership. He wrote them with his business partner and former Navy SEAL teammate, Jocko Willink. And so I'm going to send you 2 signed copies of this book because I felt like it was a husband like camaraderie connection that was really cool. When I started SmartHER News, I didn't start it because I thought, oh, this is going to be, news for women only. It wasn't a girls only club. I was just trying to figure out how to deliver news in a way that would work for the multitasking American woman, because her life had changed so much over the last several decades. Requiring her to sit down and watch a television show wasn't going to work. And I thought, if it works for women, it's going to work for men. And we have a lot of different audience members, many men. Thank you, men. You can say that you're super evolved because you are a follower of SmartHER News. I appreciate that. And I've thought about, do we change the name? Because so many people need nonpartisan news, but it is SmartHER News. And I love the name SmartHER News. And we're referring it a lot to it as SHN. But a lot of our most loyal audience members are men, my husband included, my brother included, some of his friends. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And obviously, everyone is welcome here, and we appreciate you. On that, I want to get into another political question about everybody welcome here. You can hear in Holly's voice, she has a certain opinion, but I appreciate Holly asking this, and we're going to stay a little bit with politics. So here's Holly's question about the election coming up.
What can we do as the average American citizen to persuade the Republican National Committee to choose another presidential candidate that is not Donald Trump? Even if Donald Trump wins the primary, we would prefer them to choose someone else, like Nikki Haley, for the party ticket. Is that a possibility? How would we go about doing that?
So, really interesting, Holly, to ask this question, because there's all sorts of questions swirling about the nomination process for the Republicans, specifically because we're in such unprecedented historic times when it comes to this election. And I can't underscore it enough. I don't mean to sound repetitive, but it really matters in our reporting that we're very clear about this. While there are some basis for answering some of the questions about what are the possibilities in 2024, whether it's the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, we're sort of guessing. We don't really have a roadmap for how this can proceed. And what I'm referring to are the multiple cases that former President Trump is facing, what that could mean for the nomination process and even for the presidency. We don't actually know. We've never seen this before. So we have to be extremely clear about that and approach this with some humility. One thing about former President Trump I want to mention, and this has been really important to SmartHER News, which we launched during the Trump administration. And I think some of what I saw in the media landscape was an inspiration for launching SmartHER News at that time. There's a lot of different inspiration for that. But when it comes to former President Trump, you really see in reporting editorial judgment where there's either a side that really supports him or there's a side that really hates him. There's those that love him and those that hate him. And there's very little in between. And when it came to news about President Trump when he was actively serving as president, that was one of the value adds of SmartHER News, that we could just tell you what was happening and provide maybe a longer soundbite or a little more context so that you didn't have all the noise of the opinions about President Trump. Obviously, he's a catalyst for a lot of that. I want to make sure that on SmartHER News, whoever the different candidates or leaders are, that you feel like there's a safe spot for you to get information. And there are a lot of really passionate emotions about politics in America. We encourage that. We want you to have an opinion. We just want you to have a place to go to get the news. So I want to preface any conversation about former President Trump with that as well. So here's the bottom line in general when it comes to how the nomination process works or has worked in the past. This is why the early voting states really matter. As early voting happens with the Iowa caucuses and the primaries, and we're going to see it start in the middle of January, and we're really going to see it ramp up until March. how a state votes is how the delegates for that state to the Republican National Committee should also vote. They don't get to be creative. They're not supposed to be creative. If Iowa votes for President Trump, then the Iowa delegates are supposed to vote for President Trump. It can differ a little bit. There's a couple delegates that are floating, that are kind of open delegates, that aren't necessarily assigned. There's a couple different words that are used depending on whether it's Democrats or Republicans. The Democrats tend to use pledged or unpledged delegates. Most of the delegates that are voting at a party convention for the actual nominee are voting in step with the state. However, However, there are ways for the different parties to adjust their rules so that they could do something different in a historic setting. Let's take former President Trump out of this for a second. And let's just say that there is someone that has won all the early states, but they suddenly fall incredibly ill and they're no longer going to be able to run for president. The party would have to figure out a way where the delegates that are assigned to that person who decides that they can no longer run for president can vote in a different way so the party has a nominee. So there are ways that the party can vote for a change, and it would require a party vote to enable a different choice. So it's not impossible that you could see states and early states select one candidate and the party to select another candidate. It would be highly unprecedented. It would require a vote. It couldn't be something that they could do really behind closed doors. That's not what we would think would happen. However, it's only what we think would happen based on the rules as we see it. And we're not quite sure what would take place if, for example, a party decided because of legal cases that are continuing to develop during the election year that the candidate selected by these early states or the states in general isn't the candidate that the party wants to put forward. If that took place, we're in a completely, I don't even think unprecedented would work anymore to describe it. It would just be a complete change in the political process. And so know that it's possible, but in general, the delegates are supposed to vote for whoever the state chooses. Now, Stephanie had another question that sort of went along with this, as well as went along with Alex's question too about how do we know who's in the front. And so Stephanie wrote this: help us understand how polls are executed. I find it so hard to believe that former President Trump has so much support as is being reported in the polls. Perhaps understanding how they're executed could be helpful in determining for ourselves the accuracy of them. So this is why I use, and let me go ahead and stop sharing one screen. I'm going to use another. I want to show you why I use Real Clear Politics. The polls are all over the place. Whether or not a poll is going to call people, how big the sampling of the poll is, whether or not it's online or on text or through email matters. What region are they talking to? Are they talking to a party member, someone that affiliates as a member of the Republican or Democrat Party? Or are they talking to someone that says they're going to vote in the election? Are they talking to someone who's even registered to vote? These are all questions for polls that, quite frankly, aren't always so clear. And it's why you have to sometimes get to the very bottom of the polling information to see, oh, we're billing this as a national poll of how the nation feels about the candidates. But the sample size is 1,500 people that were called on a landline. So does that reflect the national feeling? That's very difficult for polls. And here's the other thing we have to remember: polls are always backwards looking. So they're always taking a snapshot of what happened a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago. And we know how fast the news moves. So I don't put a ton of weight in polls. You're not going to see me chase polls. I was aggravating to every single producer that I've ever worked with because I didn't want to use the polls. Polls are used all the time on television. I don't think it's particularly effective or really good information. It's more interesting. It's an interesting conversation starter, maybe for an interview, but not necessarily to base an entire news cycle on, because it's backwards looking, as is a lot of our data. So Real Clear Politics will take all the different polls from around the country. They put them together. They have a system. I don't know. It's a magic potion. They put it in a pot, they mix it up. This is the polling that I actually will use on SmartHER News when I want to show you, well, in general, this is what polls are saying, but I very seldom will reference a specific poll. Also important to note, different polling places, different pollsters can also have different political affiliations. Certain pollsters will have, oh, well, they're a more trusted source to talk to Republicans, or they're a more trusted source for liberal voters. It's just too much. I throw my hands up at it. I don't think that's particularly helpful, but here's what I do want to show you. Take a look at what's going on with the polls right now. This is, again, looking at Real Clear Politics. Former President Trump has a 50-point spread, 50 points away from the nearest candidate, which continues to be the current Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, with 12% of Republican voters looking at the presidential nomination. And former governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley is right behind him. So at this point, here's what I would say about the polls. We're going to kind of push them aside for a second. We're going to watch what happens in Iowa and the early voting states. This is where candidates get momentum. And if in any of these early states, former President Trump does not perform well, we will know that these polls that we're seeing are not accurate. Right now, we have no idea really how voters are feeling other than the ones that are actually being quoted. And so, are the polls accurate? We will see. But there's really no way to see until we actually get the voting information. We're going to have to watch to see how many people show up, how many people actually vote, who do they vote for? And is that just specific to Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina? Who is it? Is it specific to the entire country? Does former President Trump have the groundswell of support from Republicans all over nationwide? We'll see. And what will happen if the states are split or something, then we're going to have to do a whole other live scoop for that. But it is important to be wary of the polling and to really wait to see who actually shows up. A lot of people like to talk. Do they actually show up and they like to vote? That's a big question. And it's really important. So, Holly, as well as Stephanie, we have some prizes for you as well. Holly, I thought you would appreciate. We have our mug, our American flag tumbler. This has different pens from different times in American history, and that's how we made our American flag. So I'd love it if you'd like to choose one of these. Holly and Stephanie, you both can. And by the way, Amy from our team is going to be reaching out, and you're going to have a little liberty to choose some of your prizes as well. We tried to assign you a couple ones that we thought were particularly cool, but if you'd like to switch them out, we're glad to do that as well. But thank you so much for your questions. Okay, let's move on a little bit here too. And I'm going to go to, well, let's just take a little break from the news. I have a great question on the economy, but I want to share this because I want one of my team members to get involved. This question is from Jessica.
Hi, Jenna and the SmartHER News team. It's Jessica from Pennsylvania. First, I want to thank you for filling this space in the news world. I'm continually impressed with the variety of stories and sources, the quality of the content, and the amount of information that you guys are able to provide us on a daily basis. Every week, I listen to your Scoop Report and I read the newsletter multiple times because each time something different stands out to me. I would like to know a little bit more about your team. Do you have a small but mighty team? Is everybody based in Texas? I'd love any additional information that you're able to provide us about my personal favorite news team. Again, thanks for all that you do, and I can't wait to see what you bring us in 2024.
I love that, Jessica. Thank you so much. The truth is no, not everyone is in Texas. And we do have a small and mighty team. I'm actually going to bring Amy to the stage now. Let me pull you up, Amy, so people can see you. Look at that background with your beautiful tree. This is
Thank
Amy.
you.
She's in Virginia.
Hi, everyone.
Amy helps us with Scoop on a regular basis. She really helps us with operations. And the truth is that our team can fit to one hand. One hand is about our team and taking a variety of different roles. Amy actually slid into our DMs on Instagram a couple years ago, and we created a relationship. She asked, how could she help SmartHER News? And then all of a sudden, now she's working with us pretty much on a full-time regular basis. So Lori, Jeanette, Molly, Barbara are all saying hi to Amy. If you reach out to Scoop and you reach out to any of us at SmartHER News, hello at SmartHER News, Scoop at SmartHER News, you're likely going to reach Amy. So she's coming out from behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think
out like Oz?
Yes. What do you think they should know about the team, Amy?
Oh, I would have to agree. We are small and mighty. What I think is so interesting is that we're all united by curiosity. And so all of us are fiercely curious. And so some of us may be curious about different stories. Everybody has a different strength, which I think is neat too. We have one team member who finds the most fascinating stories, like the one that we did on dinosaur lips. It was one that I think she flagged for us, Emily. Leah's great at fact checking. Sarah has so many strengths. Courtney's been around since the beginning. We're all so different. But the one thing that I think is really cool is that we're united by curiosity.
I love that. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
Curiosity over commentary.
Mhm.
And one of the things Amy just understood from the very beginning about the team was nonpartisanship and wanting to make sure news was delivered in an easy way that's accessible for everybody. I also see my husband, Amy. Should I bring him on the screen now?
You should,
Okay,
because that's how
okay,
I
hold on.
discovered you.
That's right, and I thought that would be an interesting connection. So this is my husband, Leif. Look at that. By the way, look at his background. This is new. Leif's new lit office, ready for YouTube fame. It looks amazing, Leif. I love it.
That's thanks to the production eye of my beautiful, amazingly talented wife and founder of SmartHER
Huh.
News.
Yes, although my office doesn't look exactly. So that's going to be our next project for the new year. But Leif, it is true. We met Amy because Amy, you read Leif's books, right? Is that how
I
it all?
did. I actually listened to them. I listened to the audiobooks, and that's how I discovered it was recommended. Extreme Ownership was recommended by a friend of mine who is a Marine. And so she's like, you have to listen to this book. We had worked together in real estate. And so I listened to the book and discovered Extreme Ownership. And through happenstance, really discovered SmartHER News. And here I am, what, almost 5 years later? 4 years
It's
later? I
wild.
can't keep
It's
track.
im it's important too, and Leif, I think you've seen this with your team, is that people reach out and, they always wonder like, "Oh, should I email?" I bet they get a million emails. I bet they have a million requests, that it's a lot of time when you're starting a company, you're all by yourself, and you need people that really believe in the mission, and I know you found that with Echelon Front too.
No question. I think that's a challenge. I think for veterans leaving the military is always to try to like, hey, what I want to do next. And what we always advise them is you have to find a new mission. And Amy, what I love about you and so many members of the SmartHER News team is that you understand the mission, you understand the idea, the importance of nonpartisan reporting and providing in a world of so much information out there. I think just providing these a simple, clear, concise bullet points for readers, our listeners, and watchers, and why it actually matters. I think that's what's most important. So, being behind that mission, I think, is super important. I think for anybody on the team, we often people talk to us about, well, I run a volunteer organization, so I can't pay people. So how do I motivate them? And the greatest motivator is always is not monetary, but always like people just being a part of the mission, having ownership. And when you can give that to people, I think that's the best thing of all.
Leif, I don't know if you were on. I know you were between meetings, but I did share a question from Alex, who said that he got introduced to Smarties from his brilliant and beautiful and dynamic wife. I think that's his exact quote, if I remember correctly. And so he's going to get your books, your signed books, because I thought that was like a good husband bonding gift to Alex. But before I let you go, because I know you have to run, can you give our SmartHER News audience, and specifically the Scoop audience, any insight? I'm really scared to ask this question. Any insight about what it's been like to watch SmartHER News being built? Amy's laughing. What it's really
I
like
love it.
behind the scenes? Like, what's the truth about your wife, aka me, and this process, this ongoing process of running SmartHER News, building SmartHER News, dreaming SmartHER News? You were there from the beginning. So what do you think people should know?
Well, to back it up, even before SmartHER News, I think people should know that for our company, Echelon Front, that Jocko and I founded back in early 2012, Jenna was the angel investor in our company. So, and she was the inspiration behind that, and certainly behind Extreme Ownership, Dichotomy Leadership, the books that we've written. I think what I would just say is I'm incredibly proud at what you do and the strategic vision that you have to walk away from your job as an anchor at Fox News with a national program 5 days a week. I know how much you loved being on air, but you believe in the mission of nonpartisan news, and putting, and reaching a whole new audience and actually providing them news as a service. So I think it's been incredible to watch. Sometimes when I've tried to make recommendations or things that I've said, hey, you might want to think about hiring more people, or you might want to think about this as far as organization. I know it's very hard as an entrepreneur to think about, the resource that are required. There's a lot, and it's a nonstop thing that's going on. So sometimes I have to realize that as a husband, the guidance that I might provide, even if it's sound, it might be much better accepted coming from others. So I've tried to temper that a little bit, but definitely it's been awesome. And I think it's incredible, Jenna, that you do this and as well as take care of our 3 wild hellions at home, who I just was with this morning. And our children are incredible. I love them to death. But it's a lot, and how you manage it all, I do not know, but I'm continually impressed by you and what you do.
My children are such a source of inspiration. Our children, I should say, our children, they make reading about foreign policy so super relaxing at the end of the day, because I much rather tackle complicated subjects than try to separate them from fights that they're having at this point. So it is true this morning, everyone. I was like, I gotta leave early. I mean, I had this whole scoop broadcast. Bye. See you guys later. Bye, Leif. See you. Let's see you a little bit. Maybe you could join us. That's true. And it is also true. I can also confirm that Leif does try to give me leadership advice. I mean, he did write 2 best-selling books on it, but I also sometimes just want to vent to my husband, and then I don't listen to him as much as I probably should. It is interesting, Leif, and Amy could vouch for this. This morning we were talking about, well, how do we want to talk about the team? Because it's there's a lot of people that are involved that maybe work like a couple hours a week, or maybe work 3 days a week. And I don't know how to explain that, because we're producing a lot of content, but it's hard to do. And sometimes I am working until midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. And so, and I don't know how to explain it. And Amy was asking, well, why do you feel uncomfortable explaining it? I was like, I don't really know why. And then I thought it's because I'd love to be able to say, we have 5 full-time employees and they're all working towards this mission. And we have this great space that we come together with every day. And I'm building towards that. We're building towards that, and we have our audience to thank for it. But I really want to not just be a source of nonpartisan news that's great on Instagram. I really want the business model to work, because so many people say, oh, well, nonpartisan news can't exist, and the business model in news is broken, and there's no way you're going to solve it. And I want to make sure that there is a sustainable way to solve it. So it's not just about us and our Instagram account, that it's actually something sustainable. And it keeps me up at night thinking about that part of it. But Leif, to his credit, thank you very much, Leif. So I did invest in, because I was working, by the way, I was working full time, and Leif was building his company. I did invest in their dream of building Echelon Front. And now Leif is our investor in SmartHER News, and has encouraged me to keep going at times when I think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? So I really appreciate it, Leif. Thank you.
Well, one thing I will say to that is, even when the first 2 or 3 years of Echelon Front, when I'm thinking, hey, is this ever going to actually work? Is this ever going to pay the bills? You understood the vision, you believed in it, you encouraged me, and you really saw very clearly that this was going to be a successful company that was going to have a lot of impact on a lot of people. And I hope I've done that for you as well, because I think sometimes when you're frustrated, or you're thinking, hey, how are we going to grow the company, and we don't have the resources, or we don't have the time, or we're limited in this or that. To me, it's been very clear from the very beginning that this is an idea that's much needed. And that so many millions of people out there across America, really around the world, need this. It's powerful, it's impactful, and I really believe in the mission, and I can see very clearly that it will be successful and continue to grow. And to me, those challenges of like, how do you monetize this, or how do you, the advertising model's broken. That's just an opportunity, just like it was for me back in the Battle of Ramadi, when someone said, hey, that's enemy controlled territory, that's Al-Qaeda battle space, no one could go in there. We thought, Okay, we're going to figure out a way to get in there because that's where we're going to have the most impact. So I think that just is a great opportunity to be able to solve challenges, and they're throwing down the gauntlet. So now you guys got to come
Yeah.
up with some awesome solutions
Got to
to make
prioritize
that
and
happen.
execute.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and spot on.
We have to exactly go after AI. That's what we started the whole broadcast with this, artificial intelligence doing away with journalists. All right, Leif. Well, thank you. I appreciate you joining us. We should do this more often.
Thanks for having me. Keep
All
getting
right,
after
love you.
y'all. Thank you.
Bye, Leif. Amy, we did get some
Yeah.
great questions, including what's your favorite thing about working with me and what's one of the most frustrating things about working with me? Do you want to just tackle that real easy?
Yeah, I think that would be great to tackle with the entire audience right now. So one of the things that I love about working with Jenna is how much I've learned. I was always disappointed that I couldn't have really thoughtful conversations with my husband about politics, what was going on in the news. And recently, he was listening to a podcast when we were in the car that wasn't SmartHER News, by the way, which was very frustrating to me. I know. And he was like, "Have you heard about this?" I was like, "Yeah, Jenna reported on it weeks ago. This is old news to me." And so, one of the things that I love about working with Jenna is that she makes me smarter. One of the things that is frustrating about SmartHER News is I think that our ideas are massive, yet our time is limited. And so I wish one of the things that's frustrating is that we don't have enough time to accomplish all of the things that we want to accomplish. And so it's constantly being nimble, working with the team to figure out each other's strengths, Jenna's strengths included, in order to be able to make sure that we're using our time effectively. Does that answer the question?
I think
Yeah.
that was very diplomatically put. Thank you, Amy, for that. It is true. We have so many different ideas. We want to execute so many things, and we really want to make sure we prioritize and execute, which is something that Echelon Front and the book Extreme Ownership talk about for the company. It's easier said than done in a lot of ways because then we'll think we have a great idea, and then something crazy happens in the news, and whatever the plan is, it's all off because we just want to be there for our audience when they need us, and then it will fall out of rhythm again. So it has been something that I always thought I always wanted to be a journalist. Leif said I loved being on air. I did love being on air. I love being a journalist. I loved working in journalism every single day. I loved being a working journalist. I think I wasn't in love enough with seeing my face on television every day to obviously stay. I thought that's not actually what viewers need. And if I want to be useful to them, we got to do something different. But this idea of structuring a company wasn't something that I feel is a particular strength of mine. And that's where Amy really helps me because we're trying to put the pieces together and think about the right systems so we go into the election year with a lot of strength. Jessica, by the way, Amy's come up with a lot of our products. And so this is one of the new products we were thinking of launching this year. This is our SmartHER Heart. So all 50 states are in a heart shape. And this is a beautiful journal. So we always prototype different products. And so Jessica, we thought we'd love to send this to you because you had that question about our team, and we really appreciate it. So Amy will reach out, and now you know who Amy is on this. By the way, Amy, there is a news story though. We did
Yes.
talk about this morning, and I wanted to get in front of our audience because there's a lot of people expecting packages. We ship a lot of our different products through USPS, the United States Postal Service, simply because of the way logistically it's set up. We have an independent small business printer that the SmartHER News audience has helped support in Virginia. The post office is right across the street. This is how we're able to print and ship to you, but it has had its own problems. And Amy, talk to us about the problems that you've seen. And now that you've looked into some news articles, what are you hearing about shipping right now, the week before Christmas?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had received a couple of inquiries from the Scoop audience that they hadn't received their gift yet. And once I saw that there was a theme with regards to where these gifts were going, I was wondering if it was 2021 all over again. In that during the pandemic, there are a lot of service disruptions with regards to the mail. And we experienced that personally at SmartHER News. We had just launched the zip up hoodie with the SmartHER Heart. And I think it was upwards of 50 were lost
Mhm.
in the mail. They got stuck at a distribution center somewhere, and we weren't able to track them because tracking wasn't updating. And so something similar is happening this year, though not to that scale. With regards to what we're shipping, but it seems like it's a large scale overall and is in fact affecting the entire nation. And I'd be curious if the audience can weigh in and let us know if besides Smarter News packages, they're receiving any delays. And so what I found out was that one of the issues is that they haven't increased the amount of seasonal help that the post office typically hires. I did speak to a friend of mine who said that all of their seasonal help that they did hire quit. And so it's back to that core team trying to fulfill everything. Also, talked to him about there are some disruptions with regards to the distribution centers currently at the post office. And there's one in our area that is actually in the process of upgrading their docks. So they're not even operating at full capacity with
Oh my
regards to
gosh.
the mail that is coming in and trying to go out. And so in Virginia, this is an issue. And there is a politician who reached out via letter to the Postmaster General and asked for accountability from the post office on these disruptions. And I mean, we all know that getting our mail matters. You might be getting medications, you might be getting a paycheck in the mail, you might be getting Christmas presents. And so she's had a lot of this politician has had a lot of constituents who have reached out to her asking her for help in trying to understand what is going on with the post office. And this isn't unique to Virginia either. I read a similar story in Minnesota, and there are senators in Minnesota who have reached out to the Postmaster General for an interview. And haven't received word yet. And so they actually have made a bill called the Postal Delivery Accountability Act, which I'm going to have to look further into because it seems like this is a national problem that's affecting a lot of people, but it's not being talked about a lot yet.
Well, and I don't know about anybody else, but the sort of volume that we're getting in the mail now, whether it's Christmas cards or like a package from Amazon and something that you ordered weeks ago that's finally arriving, it's very difficult it's easy to lose track unless you have
Mhm.
that one item that you're like, if it doesn't get here in time for Christmas, then I'm really watching it every single day. So it is it's a story that's repetitive and comes up during the holidays. And as you point out, no longer the pandemic. Maybe we should have done a dock renovation, months ago instead of during the holidays. Why are these sort of decisions being made? I can't imagine that we would ever not have a postal service in America. But one of the stories this year has been that Amazon now is like the largest shipping company. It's
Mhm.
or is rivaling the UPS and the FedEx because they're just shipping. They're now able to ship independently as you get the Amazon drivers right to the house. And I wonder what happens to the postal service. So it'd be sad. I feel like the postal service is part of America, but if it's not working, or it's working in only certain ways, does it change? So if you haven't received a smarter product, reach out to Amy,
Mhm.
and we will do our best to help you in any capacity that we can. So we apologize for that. Again, it's one of those qualms of a small business operation, but we're taking a hard look at that in the new year too,
Yes.
because we can't have this happen. All right, Amy, any other final words before you go back into the
The
Christmas
back to the
lights of
curtain.
your living
Yes.
room? I love it. In the back of the curtain. Yes.
Yes. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody. It is amazing to see everybody joining here today. It's incredible to be a part of the team. I actually got to meet the whole entire team in Texas earlier this year. Initially, I had only seen people on screen, and so this year I got to meet everybody face to face, and that was made possible because of you. So thank you for supporting Smarter News and also supporting this dream for all of us to share together. So, bottom line, thank you.
Well said, Amy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you after the broadcast, by the way.
Okay,
You're my
great.
first call. All right. Talk to you later, Amy. Thank you. Amy is such an important part of the team. Leah, Emily, and Sarah are helping us on a regular basis. And Courtney, one of my really good friends who has an amazing legal eye. Sarah actually is working from Paris, where she's doing a studying abroad program. Emily is in grad school and has working on 2 different grad degrees. So this is something that she helps us with in the mornings before she goes along with her classes. Leah transitioned out of school, reached out to Smarter News and said, "Hey, I'd love to help," and is an exceptional contributor to our team, writing video, fact checking, research. She does a little bit of everything, Leah. We're so grateful for all of them, and we could not do this without them. So I appreciate you being curious about who are these people in the background that are helping us get content up and reporting the news. Let's go to one of the stories that actually Leah helped me with this morning. This is from Robin out on the West Coast.
Hey Jenna, it's Robin Frower. I hope you're doing well. My question for you is about the economy. I am not seeing prices come down for food here in the Bay, and maybe it's just the Bay, but we're still paying over $6 for a box of cereal here. And I'm seeing it in other places too, so I'm curious to know. That's where I'd love for you to dig deep and let us know, why are we still paying over $6 for a box of cereal? Hope you're all doing well. Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you so much to Robin. Robin's been a huge supporter of ours, and I appreciate hearing from Robin on a regular basis. And thank you, Robin, for that question. She always gets to the heart of the matter, which is like, why is this happening? Why are we still seeing food prices so high? And why specifically cereal, which gave me a direction to go in. So in general, here's what I want to show you. This is from the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. And what I'm showing those of you who are listening is it's a graphic that shows food prices over the last several decades. What's important to know is that we have been through one of the largest annual increases in food prices since the 1980s over the past year. So we have seen food prices skyrocket. If you're feeling that way, it's because they have, and we haven't seen anything like it in the last several decades. So it is different, it's exceptional. The prices are high compared to what you've seen. But the reason why I'm showing you this graph is that you see in general that food prices have continued to go up over the years. So they seldom decline, if ever decline at all. In general, we're always going to see price increases. The question is, how much are they going to increase, and are they going to increase in a sustainable way? Inflation, the rising of prices that we're seeing in our economy is natural. We need to see some inflation because that reflects a growing economy. We don't want to see too much inflation because high inflation means that our dollar is actually buying us less, which is something that we've also seen. So while food prices have gone up for a lot of different reasons, including inflation, the value of our dollar, meaning what we're able to get for our dollar, has gone down as inflation has been high for us. So you have a lot of different variables swirling together. There's several stories, though, that aren't getting the attention that they deserve that have impacted these prices. And once the prices are up and once consumers are paying for them, they seldom are going to come back down. One of them was a really big story over the last year, which is the avian flu. This is a bird flu that's affected a lot of different birds across the country, just to speak generally. And when there's an infection at a farm, oftentimes the farmer has to cull the entire group of birds. You can't uh, you know isolate one of them and hope the rest of them don't get sick. That's not how it works. And so that really affected egg prices. Egg prices can affect a lot of different products besides simply eggs. Then you also have the war in Ukraine, considered the breadbasket of Europe. This affected grain prices because there's a grain output in Ukraine that mainly goes to places like Africa. We don't necessarily get grain from Ukraine into the United States, but all of this affects grain prices overall. It's one of the reasons that we could say, well, grain prices are higher because there was less of the supply for the economy overall. So there's several different dynamics other than just, oh, well, there's an inflation that we're experiencing. There's these side stories too, supply and demand issues, shipping issues that we've seen over the last year that has all led to increase in prices. Labor costs have gone up. So you're seeing all these different areas that affect the food that we're getting in our grocery stores that is affecting prices. And once they stay up, once they're at a level, the likelihood is that they're not coming back down. What we may see is that the pace of the price rising will slow down. And that's what's anticipated in the next year, that we're not going to see such a dramatic jump in pricing, but you're still going to see prices go up. And we could get into a broader conversation about deceleration, deflation in the economy, that rather than inflation. But right now, the most important thing to note is that we are seeing the pace of inflation come down. So we're not seeing these, huge the inflation readings aren't as high as they once were. The pace of them isn't going high as it once was, but we still have inflation in the economy. We still have prices that are higher, and the likelihood is that we're not going to necessarily see them come back down unless there's a different equation or a different thought by those food providers themselves. If the cereal providers see that they're actually not selling, then maybe you see something different. But right now, based on that chart, you can see the prices go up. Once they're up, hard to come back down again. So not the best news, Robin. I apologize for that. But an important thing just to consider, it's not just about inflation. There's all these other news products or news items that are affecting prices overall that still haven't worked themselves out even from the pandemic. I'm going to give Robin some carte blanche. She travels a lot and she sends us photos periodically from different places around the world, which I love, Robin. Thank you. And we have a special scoop for SmartHER News that we picked out that I'd love to send you, but I also want to give you an opportunity to shop in our shop too. And so we're going to make sure that you have that opportunity, Robin. So we have a special gift, but we also going to give you a little extra shopping cash this season. Well, we appreciate all your questions. Thank you so much. Those are the audio questions we received. We received a lot of great email questions as well. You can see how the audio questions really help and the voice memos. So if you have an opportunity to send us when you have any questions, we want to make sure that we're answering the questions for you and that we make news work for you again. I'm just going to finish up here on what I described to you as one of the most important stories that came across my desk this year. And if you hang with us just for a second, I think this will impact you in a very significant way as it did me. As we've mentioned, Scoop is something new we launched. We were trying to crack the code of what it takes to invest in independent journalism and make independent journalism work and use something different than a Substack or gated content or all these pop-up ads. And so Scoop was our thought behind that. And so many of you have been so gracious to contribute. It really matters. And because our team is so small and because we are still figuring out what works here, we know you, we see you. And when you sign up, we see you. When you leave or you ask to leave sometimes or apologize sometimes for leaving for economic reasons, we always ask for feedback because we're always curious, how do we do better? What can we do to make this more sustainable? And it's because we have such a relationship with our audience that when we received this email, we were able to behave in a way that I think many different companies would not. So let me go ahead and pull it up here for you. We received this email a few months ago, and it said this: I just want to confirm the cancellation of this account for Grace. And the person lists Grace's email and her phone number. I just want to confirm the cancellation of this account for Grace, my late wife. As described in the cancellation request, she passed away when a drunk driver hit her and my youngest two daughters. So that's not a note we expected to receive. And we reached out to David, her husband, the person who wrote the email, to share our condolences. And this is what we learned about what happened to Grace. So Grace and David have 5 children. They live in California, and they were 15 minutes from home on a road trip this summer with all their kids. It was sort of early evening. They're almost home. But as any parent knows, sometimes your children just need to use the bathroom. And so they pulled off the side of the road. They went to a gas station. And Grace took her youngest daughters to try to use the restroom, but they weren't able to use the restroom there. So as David was pumping gas, Grace is walking with her daughters sort of out onto the sidewalk, and she's going to look for a bathroom. And this is when cops say a driver speeding under the influence, based on what we're surmising from the police report, hit Grace and her daughters. And David, witnessing the event, said that Grace pushed her daughters out of the way to avoid this car, felt the full impact of the crash. She was killed. Her daughter survived, spent more than a month in the hospital, but they're out of the hospital now. And this driver, media reports say, is 27 years old. was charged with the crime. When we heard of this story, we went into reporting mode right away. We reached out to all the sources, law enforcement in the area in Sacramento, and wanted to double check the facts. And the driver is charged with 3 felonies, including vehicular manslaughter. And despite these being very, very serious charges, he's out on bail and he will appear in court in March. So the story is ongoing. And so David gave me permission to share Grace's story, and he talked to me about how much Smarter News and the Smarter News community meant to Grace. So much so that she signed up for Scoop, and that she had bought some of our gear, and that she had talked to David about Smarter News. And we've been able to have this really nice exchange, and I really appreciate him enabling us to talk a little bit about Grace. So here's 3 things I just want to leave you with. Number 1, I want to recognize Grace. Grace was clearly a hero. In the news, we often hear about the worst happening in the world, but we can't forget the goodness that really surrounds us each and every day. There's heroes in our community that are doing incredible things every single day. They will not get the same attention in the news that some of the worst stories will, but we have to remember that they're there, and Grace is an example of that. David said that Grace is a super mom to their 5 kids, that she was dedicated to her 5 children, that she served in the PTA, that she participated in church. She did all these amazing things. And she was 37 years old when she passed. It's important that we know her name, that we recognize her, and that we recognize her sacrifice. And so I wanted to make sure to share this story with you today. The second thing that I wanted to mention to you is really a lesson from Grace. A person dies of drunk driving in America every 39 minutes. Every 39 minutes. That means roughly 37 people today will be killed or will no longer be with us due to someone drunk driving. And that's just drunk driving. That's not driving under the influence of anything else. This is specifically alcohol. So it doesn't include other things. I want us just to think about that for a second, especially this time of year when there's extra parties, there's extra rushing, there's extra drinking, there's extra traffic. It's just a reminder we got to take care of ourselves, we got to take care of our friends, we got to take care of our families. We have to do the little extra step of work. And you may say, "Well, Jenna, I don't drink." So that's not that we already got that taken care of. I want to mention this to you especially now because we have to anticipate that there are people that are drinking and driving at odd times during this holiday season, and we have to be heads up. So when I talk about taking care of each other, I'm talking about that as well. But those are really startling statistics. Again, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, but the charges against this driver are that he was specifically drunk driving when he hit Grace and the 2 little girls. And the final thing is, I want us to honor Grace and to know that Grace exists here with us. David wrote me that Grace would always talk about Smarter News. She would inform me of the events taking place around the world. She always admired your ability to span both sides of the political aisle. She loved your IG channel, our Instagram channel. I take this as a huge compliment, but really a compliment for us. Grace reflects our community. We're a unique group that doesn't exist a lot of places, where you have a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and they find a place to meet up and hang out and talk about the news here. All these different people value nonpartisan news. There's nothing like it. There's no other news source that is going to do a story like this, that has this sort of connection with the audience, where we're a real community together, that you're a real part of building a solution in news. And I can't help but take what David says as really a tribute to Grace, but a real tribute to the community overall. And that's a community that you're a part of. David works in law enforcement in California. He's a single dad now of 5 kids. He did not ask for any help. I want to show you their family, their beautiful family. This is Grace and her 5 kiddos. David's there in the middle. Here's a picture of Grace. Again, 37 years old when she passed. Here's a picture of her girls, Rosalie and Susanna, leaving the hospital. They have some ongoing therapy that they're receiving physically, but they're able to try to get back into a rhythm of life. But this is the first holiday that the family is spending without their mom. And I've been thinking a lot about Grace. So David did not ask for any help. He was just giving me information, but I did ask David how we can help. I did ask him, what is the way that we can help? And it turns out one of his friends had set up a GoFundMe page. They have no idea how much the medical prices or costs are going to be. As anyone knows, it's been in any sort of medical emergency or surgery, you get bills, for goodness sakes, for a long time afterwards. You have really no idea what the estimates are going to be. So that's something that David is handling as they all are trying to navigate this new life. And so I'm going to make sure that the GoFundMe page is on our website. It's also going to be available in our links on social media. It'll be in our show notes for podcast, just in case you'd like to learn a little bit more about their family. Certainly no pressure, but especially this holiday season, I thought it was important that you had a path to help if you wanted to help. Despite all of this, David talks a lot about faith. He always talks about faith in every single note. He talks about his faith and he talks about Grace's faith. And I wanted to share this with you after I told David that I wanted to share Grace's story. This is what he wrote me. He said, I think Grace would have loved for you to get this message out about the dangers of drunk driving. She would have loved for you to cover her story. And now it has impacted literally thousands of people in our local area. God is moving and working more than I ever will know. This is what God has invited us into at this time. I know God's plan is not my plan, but He gives me the strength to get through each day. What an incredible message, considering all that David has confronted this year and how his life changed in a split second just because of just one of those things, one of those choices that we all make on a regular basis that then can impact us for the rest of our lives. So I'm really thinking a lot about Grace and her family, and that she is a member still of this Scoop community and of SmartHER News. And I'm so grateful to David for allowing us to talk a little bit about her. So thank you. And thank you to Grace for believing in us. Thank you to all of you who are believing in us. You matter. Your stories are important too. The news is something we can help you with, but what we're building here is something different. And I really appreciate your presence, your efforts, your inspiration on a regular basis. So thank you for all of that. And with Grace in our hearts, I just want to wish you a really Merry Christmas, a happy holiday season as we prepare for a brand new year. We're going to be back with more regular Scoop broadcasts in the new year. We have a couple special features that you'll see during this holiday time, but we know it's a busy time and we want to be helpful to you and supportive. So we have a couple different ways we're going to do that. We look forward to your feedback as always. We'll have an updated website as always at smartnews.com. But thank you so much. Have a very Merry Christmas, and you'll see us with more in 2024 on smartnews.com. Have a great day, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.